Hey everybody, this is TCG Productions here, and today we're going to be performing more SCSI upgrades on the 1993 Gateway 2046 system. So, let's jump right in. So, I've already pulled this, okay. This is another thing that begins with I was looking on eBay one day, and that day was actually, well, 3 days ago. So I was looking on eBay for some totally unrelated stuff, specifically a diskette drive adapter that allows me to use non-IBM diskette drives with my IBM PS2 Model 25, which is below the table here. Actually, well, let me see. Yeah, it's pretty much directly beneath the Gateway 2000 system right now, below the table. So, anyways, I've got plans for that system coming up in the, well, it could be not too distant future, could be distant future. It's at some point down the road. And at the same time, I decided to snag a parallel port postcard for my IBM PS2 Model 55SX, which there is a resurrection video about that system that has been on hold for, well, I'd say about 3 or 4 years now, because, well, I haven't been entirely bothered to do anything with that system, not only because of its current location, stuffed away in a fairly inaccessible place in the tech room, it's also got a dead power supply. Now, if I substitute in the IBM PS2 Model 25's power supply, the system does, well, kind of do some stuff, but I believe that the Dallas clock module on it is dead, and as a result, the post halts before the system can bring up its video adapter. The hard drive in it sounds like a freight train, and so I'll probably need to give it a hard drive as well. But that's not the point of this video. So anyways, I was looking around on eBay for those two components, and I just happened to stumble across an eBay listing for a Seagate ST41650N hard drive. It's another massive, absolutely full-height SCSI drive, and and it was listed as 4 parts or repair because they did not, I don't think that the seller had the proper equipment to test the drive. I mean, who has 50-pin SCSI hardware just kicking around? Hint, I do. So, anyways, I bought this drive off of eBay for the princely sum of $25 plus shipping, and the drive arrived yesterday, and let me show you the absolute gargantuan mammoth of a box this drive came in. Yep. Now, the way this particular drive was packaged is as follows. The drive itself was in a nice large anti-static bag that had been properly sealed, and then that was wrapped up in about a half-dozen layers of bubble wrap, alternating directions, and then that whole thing got put into the box along with a metric ton of snowman poop, also known as styrofoam packing peanuts. And the drive did survive the shipping process, and I tell you what, I have never seen such good packing methodology from an eBay seller. 10 out of 10 will buy from them again. And so last night I actually tested this drive, and the drive does work as long as you set it up properly. The setup on these drives, it can be quite odd, and it's highly specific. If you have just one thing wrong, it will not work properly at all. Now, if you really want to see a SCSI controller do the most oddball, interesting things possible, do this. Set the controller card up so that way it doesn't send power down the cable for termination, and then go ahead and configure any drive on the SCSI chain to use interface power or cable power for termination. I tell you what, that will absolutely screw the whole thing up so bad you will even question if the SCSI controller itself is working if you don't know what you have done. So, Yeah, I did that last night, and well, let's just put it this way: I've never seen errors like that come up in the Linux kernel logs. So, but anyways, that's the drive right there, and it looks fairly close to the ST41760NV that currently lives in there, other than the slightly different label and the sticky note on top. I don't know what the sticky note is for, but I'll just stick it onto the front of my Apple multiple scan 14-inch monitor because it's there. So, so what the plan is here is the system is currently dual booting between Windows for Workgroups 3.11 on that Seagate ST41200NV hard drive at the very top of the system in the drive cage, which is actually how these older style gateway cases got the nickname Penthouse, because the hard drive cage is all the way up at the top of the computer as if it was a penthouse. So now, this particular case design did not see production for very long before it was replaced with the newer so-called new tower style, which actually folded the hard drive cage down beneath the 3.5-inch front panel expansion bays where you could fit floppy drives. So, yeah, they also changed the whole case configuration around somewhat severely. So, anyways, the system also boots into Windows 95 on the Seagate ST41760NV drive. Now, whenever I originally installed this drive, I had just simply cloned the ST3491A over to the ST41760NV, but I upgraded that particular installation to Windows 95 because I had quite a bit of room available on that drive. Now, I could have done the same thing on the ST3491A drive, but I would have been severely lacking on hard drive space as a result. And besides, the system only has 8 megabytes of physical memory installed, so the system would have run very poorly because that particular drive is pretty slow compared to the 4766NV. So, what the plan is here is the Windows 95 installation on the ST41766NV is going to be cloned over to the ST41650N drive, and the Windows for Workgroups 3.11 installation on the ST3491A is going to be moved over to the Seagate ST41766NV drive. Now, I can do one phase of this upgrade in the system. I can install the ST41650N drive and go ahead and move the Windows 95 installation over, but to move the Windows 3.11 installation over to the ST41766NV, I will have to pull those drives out of the system and use the Tech Room Legacy Things computer to perform that operation, because I'm going from an IDE drive to a SCSI drive. And yes, this system does have both an IDE and a SCSI controller in it, so does a Tech Room Legacy Things system, but I do not have enough physical room in the case to install all of these drives simultaneously: the ST3491A, the 4766NV, and the ST41650N drive. So unless I can do something with the empty 3.5-inch expansion bay beneath the floppy drive, but I think I've tried shoehorning a drive in there and it just didn't work very well at all. So that option is kind of off the table. So what I'm going to do first is, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to uninstall the ST3491A drive and go ahead and install the ST41650N drive into that drive cage. Now, I'm going to have to move the ST4766NV drive up to where the 5.25-inch floppy drive is right now. but they have tabs on, they've got 4 tabs that prevent me from doing that, so I'm going to have to bend or otherwise remove those tabs to make that possible. And then the 5 1/4 inch floppy drive will be kicked down to the very bottom of the 5 1/4 inch expansion stack, so that way I have enough length on the, I have enough room on the SCSI cable to plug a drive in up here and up here at the same time, which right now it is kind of sort of possible, but right, that is kind of sort of possible, but comma, I will be severely stressing the SCSI connector on the 476NV drive, and I really don't want to break it. So, because it will cost me at least $50 to replace that drive with something else if I want a different model hard drive, and I really don't have any backups of it at the moment, so yeah, let's not. So we are going to have to pull the power supply out of the system to get this drive cage out. So I think I will be able to do this without unplugging everything and cutting all the cable management zip ties and whatnot. So let's go ahead and drop the power supply onto its little shelf, and then let's see if I'm clever enough to move this thing out of here in such a way. Okay, there we go. Yep. Alrighty. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to go ahead and unbolt, well, not unbolt per se, but otherwise remove the 4 screws that secure the penthouse drive cage into the system. So, and then once that's done, it's a very careful balancing act to remove the drive cage without further infringing upon the power supply. So, screw is a little bit messed up. That screw head's a little bit messed up. So, down and out goes the drive cage. So now, let's turn our attention down here, and I'm going to go ahead and swap the drives out. So, I'm going to start by removing the moving the ST41650N out of the way. And let me see, this drive is screwed in from the bottom here. So 4 screws on the bottom, and we will have this drive out of here. Now notice that this drive cage can accommodate up to 2 3.5 inch or 2 5 1/4 inch half height drives, or 1 5 1/4 inch full height drive. So almost. And there we go. Drive is now out of the system. So here is the ST3491A drive. And let's see. Okay, yeah, I was looking to see if this drive had a label on it saying to not connect the frame of the drive to ground, because the frame rails on the drive, okay, no, they're not electrically isolated from ground. So this is not this isn't one of the newer style drives. So anyways, yep, this is the ST3491A drive that I just removed. Set that over there. And we currently have thunderstorms getting ready to roll in and move through the area, so if the light should suddenly go out, we will all know about it, but the lights in here will stay on thanks to a pair of uninterruptible power supplies. It's backing up the tech room. 32 minutes says the main tech room UPS. And there's a shredder in the living room shredding a credit card offer. So anyways, the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to slide. Well, actually, I do need to set the SCSI ID on here, and I need to disable termination on the ST41650NV drive. And if I do it right, I can one-shot that with a single. Jumper. So you see, can actually. If I can mount this drive up and still access the jumpers, that would be great. But the hard part right now seems to be actually just physically mounting the drive. So let's see, I'm going to try sliding that up there and seeing if I have enough room physically to put the drive into the computer, then into the drive cage, but it doesn't look like I have that kind of room, so this is going to have to be done the hard way, I suppose. So I'll put the cage up on its end like that, and physically slide. Nope, the front panel's blocking us. Okay. You know what? No, that end needs to face that way. Okay, here's a better option. Let's just take the whole drive and cage is slightly warped, unfortunately. I'm just going to slide the drive down into the cage just like that. We are in like Flynn, and we scrape the paint off of one edge. Okay. So now that the drive is in the cage, I can go ahead and screw it in. And then I can mount the drive in. I can mount the drive cage assembly back into the computer, put the power supply back in place, and then I can unmount the ST41766NV drive and go ahead and reconfigure it and this drive in one shot. So let me see, I'm going to put the front of the drive as far forward from the cage as I can. Tighten these screws down quite tightly, in fact, so that the drive can't wander off to rather undesirable locations in the computer, such as, I don't know, screws fall out, drive ends up falling out of the cage when it's running and eats the power supply and all of the expansion cards. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and take this drive, slide it up and in. I'm actually going to slide that so far forward that the mounting screws aren't visible, but I'm doing that so that way there's absolutely no chance that the drive cage can unintentionally fall out of the system and eat the drive. So I'm going to slide this back now and put one screw in. Okay. We're just about home free on this process now. That screw is running for freedom. So now I'm going to move this into position and get that screw started. And now the entire drive cage is pretty much secure in the computer. Now I'm getting the screws started first before I actually torque anything down, so that way I have some room to move this. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten these up somewhat, most of the way-ish, so that way I still have room, so that I can still shuffle the drive cage around as needed to encourage jumpers and whatnot to come loose. Now the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and put the power supply back into place. So the drive cage comes forward. And I just realized that might be a problem. I might not have enough room for the SCSI cable. So, yeah, that's not going to reach. Okay. Alright, so move this up expansion unit. Put this in right here. Okay. Yep, we're definitely going to have to bring the existing drive up a unit. And the power supply is going to have to come out so that way I can get sufficient access to the jumper block, the jumper setup block on the drive, or should I say the setup jumper block on the drive, to adequately configure it for its new home. I'm still going to put the power supply in, however, loosely. So that way it can't fall out and cause bad things to happen. Okay, power supply is in. Now the 5 1/4 inch floppy drive needs to come out. Fortunately, all of these expansion devices are intended to come out through the front, and the hard drive also needs to come free. So I'm going to start by getting the hard drive out of the way. Bump. Alright, all the mounting screws are out of the drive. And now this drive should slide forward and out of the computer. It's still a little bit warm because I had the system running up until about 5 minutes before I hit record on the camera. And now the floppy drive is coming out of the system. Alright, hard and floppy drives are now out of the system, and it is now time to modify the case slightly. So there is a set of 4 tabs between the second and third and fourth expansion 5 1/4 inch expansion bays that hold the devices up. Now these tabs are completely missing between the first and second expansion bays to allow for things like large hard drives. But I need to install a drive in the second and third expansion bays, a large full-height 5 1/4 inch drive, and specifically the Seagate ST41650NV drive, so that way I have enough room to plug both of them into the same SCSI cable. So I am going to take a pair of duckbill pliers and just bend these tabs. Well, the plan is to bend these tabs down and out of the way. However, it looks like the optical drive is also going to have to come out in order to make that a possibility, because I need room to get in there to do that. And so that also involves removing the ground strap for the power switch. That helps to ground the power switch out, so that way should a fault develop within it, it will instead trip the circuit breaker. Almost forgot the CD audio cable. Well, actually I did completely forget the CD audio cable. Okay, now that I have the room to do that, okay, well that was easy. What I did is I just used the duckbill pliers and bent the tabs a bunch of times until they all snapped off, actually pretty cleanly. So I wonder if those were actually intended to be removable, well, shall we say deletable from the case, should this exact scenario arise. So now that the the tabs that we need removed are removed, I'm going to reinstall our expansion devices. And let's see. Alright, where are you? I'm looking for the ground strap for the power switch. And then it's just a matter of reinstalling devices and whatnot. At least for this phase of the upgrade. I'm just putting things in here loosely so I can move things around and line up the new hard drive. Line up the hard drive. Line everything up to the hard drive, because the hard drive is what sits farthest back in the case. Put this Molex connector in up here. Plug in the IDE connector. Cable management. Okay, now I'm going to slot the floppy drive in down here. And go ahead and screw this into place. Loosen this up a little bit. And then I'll need to wrangle with cabling a little bit. Alright. Set the connector is right there. So that plugs in there. And then that will plug in right there. Then I can mount the hard drive in here. Where I will need to be careful. So so as to avoid damaging the floppy drive that is sitting beneath it, because remember, those tabs are no longer installed in the case, so there is nothing to support the hard drive from crushing the floppy drive that lies beneath it. So I've got one side mounted up, and there's the other side partially mounted. There we go. So now I'll go ahead, line up all of our devices, and go ahead and get everything put into place. At some point I could pull the front off of these devices and paint them all beige, specifically the ST41650NV and the 5 1/4 inch floppy drive. Alright. Now I need to examine the jump configuration on the ST41650NV. SCSI ID 0, termination on. So let me see, termination off. And then 4 pins, 2, 6, 3, 2, SCSI ID bit 1. Parity check on. Termination, parity checking, SCSI ID 1. And well, let's turn parity checking off. Okay. I believe I have the drive configured for my purposes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to plug everything back in. So plug power into the ST41650NV. Plug the SCSI cable into the ST41650NV. And then the ST41650N. Alright, everything is plugged in. So now I'm going to tighten the screws down fully on the power supply. Get the system set up on the workbench here. Grab my AT keyboard adapter, get everything plugged in, and we'll have a smoke test. Alrighty, we are set up, plugged in, ready to go. So here we go. Okay. We have no hard drive spin up. Invalid config information. Okay, that's because the CMOS battery has, well, the system doesn't have a CMOS battery. Okay, I've got something that's screwed up because the postcard, the SCSI card is hanging around. We have solidly lit LEDs on both drives. So yes, something is a little bit wrong. Okay, everybody, we're back. I think I've worked all the bugs out of the SCSI chain on the system. I needed to install the terminating resistors on the SCSI card. Now when I close the system back up and put it back into its cubby hole, those resistors will be coming out, as I do have a SCSI tape drive that will be connected, and I have termination set up and enabled on that drive. And yeah, and let me see, I think I've got the SCSI ID on the yeah, I've got SCSI ID 0 set on the ST41650NV, and I've got SCSI ID, I think 2 or 4 set on the SCSI ID 2 is what I have set on the ST41650N drive. I think either that or SCSI ID 1. I'm not completely sure. We'll have a look whenever we get up into Windows 95. So here we go. It might complain because I've had the system powered off for quite some time. There we go. For some reason, the Seagate ST41650NV reports as a CDC 94191-15, and I have a bit of a feeling that that has something to do with the Control Data Corporation. Yes, that CDC, Control Data Corporation. I haven't actually looked in to see if I don't have the network cable attached, so we're not doing networking anything on here. But I haven't looked in to see what happened to the Control Data Corporation's hard drive division, or storage devices division, but I have a sneaking suspicion they sold it off to Seagate in the very late 1980s, 1989, 1990 or thereabouts. So, and whenever the system comes up, we are going to get a warning saying that there is no mouse connected. But that is because there is no mouse connected. Now I can navigate the system I can navigate through the system perfectly well via only keyboard shortcuts. So, yep, there's our warning saying Windows does not detect a mouse attached to the computer. You can safely attach a serial mouse now. To attach a mouse to a PS2 mouse port, you must first turn the computer off. And there's weather radio going off because thunderstorms, aren't they lovely? And then we'll get prompted for the Microsoft networking dialog. We can just escape right through that, and then we'll land up at a desktop. What resolution are we running at here? Information. 800 by 600 at 72. Negative 15,538 hours? I think that's overflowed. Just back out of that. But if we pop over here into Adaptec's SCSI Interrogator option. Yep, I've got the drive configured for SCSI ID 1. And that is the Seagate ST41650N drive. It's a SCSI 2 drive, capacity of 1350 megabytes as formatted, 512 bytes per sector. And, oh my, it's got a decent burst of lightning. Drive supports synchronous mode, SCSI linking, and command queuing. It does not support wide SCSI. I think you have to have a 68-pin connector for wide SCSI. So, if we look at our defect list here, we have a relatively short primary defect list, and of course our grown defect list is completely empty. So, tab out of that. And if we look at our SCSI ID number 0 device, Seagate ST41766NV, it again identifies as a CDC 94191-15 drive. Again, Control Data Corporation more than likely. It is only a SCSI 1 drive, and as such it does not support any of the SCSI features listed below. So, 632 megabytes of capacity, 512 bytes per sector. If we look at our defect list, we have a very long primary defect list. This must have been a Monday or a Friday drive. So, and of course, our grown defect list is completely empty. So, get out of that. And, let me see, exit. And if we go to Start menu, Windows Explorer, and let's see. Well, let's just page up here to SCSI disk, and then let's go ahead and get over here into ST41650N. You can see that there is a very bare bones DOS installation on this drive. Command.com, doublespace.bin, io.sys, and ms-dos.sys. Windows says 1.31 gigabytes of free space. So, if we, you know what, let's shut the system down, drop to MS-DOS mode, right now we've got stuff loading. Yeah, I don't have the mouse connected, so the Logitech mouse driver is complaining and it refused to load. So, let's see. I actually had to count the bytes free on the drive. So, yeah, we have a command.com file listed, well, with the date stamp of 09/30/93. So I'm thinking MS-DOS 6-ish. If we try to run it, we just get an error, incorrect DOS version. So let's do a set ver 6.0. Yeah, let me see, set ver 6.22. Yeah, we just get incorrect DOS version errors. So do a dir all io.sys, ms-dos.sys, command.com, and doublespace.bin. All date stamped 09/30/93, 6:20 a.m. So it's very likely someone did a format/s command, which copies system files to the drive. The volume label is ST41650N. So if we can't undelete, unformat. Let's see what we have here. Unformat. No. Are you sure you want to unformat this drive? Okay, apparently. Continue. D. Okay, this error message just popped up. Windows has disabled direct disk access to protect your long file names. To override this protection, see the lock command for more information. The system has been halted. Press Control-Alt-Delete to restart your computer. And I can't even control break out of this. So, besides, the drive unformat wasn't finding anything. So, ooh, that's a big old bolt of lightning. So yeah, I don't think there was anything recoverable left on the drive. So yeah, we'll just let it boot graphically. Yeah. So anyways, yeah. So someone probably did perform a long format or otherwise wipe the drive with some sort of data erasure software such as DBAN or something similar. So yeah, I'm not going to look into that too much. Not that I really had too many long file names on there anyways, since I upgraded it from a Windows for Workgroups 3.11 install. Just about everything on there follows the 8.3 standard. 8 characters for the file name and 3 characters for the file extension. So once this boots up, we'll go ahead and immediately shut Windows 95 down, drop back into DOS mode, and start up Fdisk and create a brand new partition on the drive. Long format it and go from there. And it froze. Nope, it did not freeze. Wow, I'm actually surprised it came up. Yeah, usually most of the time, if I don't hard reset the system, Windows 95 will crash with a really weird error saying unsupported data configuration, and I'll have to hard reset the system to get it back. So I'm honestly surprised that it actually came up. So with that drive chugging away. So we'll take the shutdown option, MS-DOS, go ahead and kick out of Windows. Alright, so I will counting the bytes on the drive. So DC Fdisk I wonder what /status will do. Okay. So let's actually go ahead and head up into Fdisk for real. And we will change the current fixed disk drive to 2. We'll delete a partition or logical DOS drive. We'll delete a primary partition. ST41650N. Yes. Alright, there we go. Alright, where was I? Just deleted the partition off of the drive. So let's see. Four partitions defined. Create DOS partition. Create primary partition. You wish to use the maximum available size? Yes. Primary DOS partition created. Drive letters changed or added. We display it. File system unknown. State to continue. Go ahead and exit. So alright, so we need to reboot, so I'll just use Control Delete here and reboot the computer that way. It's beeping because I filled the keyboard buffer hitting F8. So we'll just go safe mode command prompt only. Fastest way to get us up in here. Invalid media type. Let's see. Format/V Windows 95. Okay. D. Yep. Actually, nope. Okay, D is the one we want. So format 95D. Yep. And I can see the drive activity light. %, completed. So it is formatting. This will probably take quite some time, and we will come back when this has finished. Alright, the format has officially completed. I wasn't really timing to see how long it would take, but I would guesstimate that took, I don't know, probably a good 30, 45, I'd say right somewhere around 30 minutes or so, if I had to take a wild guess. So, now that we have the drive formatted, yep, 1.3 odd gigabytes, 1.4 it says. So now, since I'm curious, I'm actually going to reboot the system, and as soon as the camera regains focus, we'll actually go ahead and boot up into Windows and see what happens. What I want to do here is I want to open up the Adaptec SCSI Interrogator software and read the known defect list, since I did hear a couple of bad spots on the drive. So again, I don't have the network cable plugged in. Okay, yep, there's as soon as I can bring the focus in. Okay, yep, there's the error that I'm talking about. So unsupported data configuration, and now the system just halted. So, reset. Message about a serial mouse not being connected. Escape through the password dialog. Alright, so we'll go Programs, Gap Check SCSI, open up the SCSI Interrogator, look at SCSI ID number 1, tell it to read the defect list, and no known defects. Of course it says defects previously, defects detected by the format operation during medium certification. Defects previously identified with a reassign blocks command, and defects previously detected by the target and automatically reallocated. So, okay. And then, of course, SCSI ID 0's defect lists have not changed. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to copy the entire contents of drive C to drive D. And for this, we'll need to boot into clean real mode DOS. Now, I do want a full MS-DOS installation, so I'm going to tell it to shut down the computer. And we will get the message that says it is now safe to turn off your computer. And at which point I will hit the reset button. And as soon as the system passes post and checks the floppy drive, I'll go ahead and spam the daylights out of the F8 key and copy everything and tell it to boot into the safe mode command prompt, which is really just DOS. Post is passed, we're checking the floppy drive, and as soon as I see the indicator light up, spam the F8 key, and we'll take option 7, safe mode command prompt only, and that is just plain DOS. So, alright, now the next thing we want to do, let me see, is Xcopy available to us? Yes, it is. File not found, counting the bytes on the disk. Okay, Xcopy. Okay, Xcopy CD. Change, copy empty subdirectories, and verify. So, copying from C to D. We are copying files with the archive attribute set, not changing. And we are copying all subdirectories, even if they are empty, and we are verifying all the files. So here we go. Well, unfortunately it does not look like it has ended well for this drive. As we can see here, Seagate C-Tools says that a legacy long test has failed on this drive. So, yeah, I figured something was wrong because the Xcopy was acting a bit weird. Of course, that also could have been Xcopy. So, after fooling around with Xcopy and the copy command for far too long, I decided to pull the ST41650NV out and move it over to the Tech Room Legacy Things system. I copied everything off of it just fine. Then I pulled the ST41650N out of the system, moved it over to the Tech Room Legacy Things system, and that's where things quickly took a rather hard nosedive, because I was getting really strange errors, operation not permitted errors, trying to copy files onto the drive. Files would not delete, files would not copy. So, this is a work-in-progress system, well, kind of a project system, really. And I transplanted the Adaptec SCSI controller from the Tech Room Legacy Things system over to this system, transplanted the drive over, fired it up, and started playing around with Seagate C-Tools. C-Tools Enterprise specifically, and it has definitely not ended well for this drive. If I come over here to the disk test tab, let's do a Seagate drive long test and hit start. It immediately fails. If I do a short test and start it, it fails. If I come over here to the Format tab and click Format Now, tell it yes, I do want to format, it starts it, but it fails at the 11-second mark. Or 12 seconds actually. So yeah, of course, if I can try to change the capacity, commit changes, and it will go ahead and try it, and yeah, that failed. If I try to change the block size of the disk, say 1024 bytes, go and tell it to format, it immediately fails, so yep. So unfortunately, it does not look like it is ended well for this drive. Okay, just as one last addendum to this part of the video, here is an inside look at this Seagate ST41650N hard drive. Very large platters. I don't know exactly how many there are in there. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looks like an 8-platter drive. We do have a very, very large head stack. If I trip this solenoid and kick the head stack out to the edge, it is possible to see that there appear to be 15 or 16 physical heads in the drive. I don't know if the very bottom platter has a lower side head. Yeah, I cannot tell if that bottom platter has a low side head. So, but I think at some point we're going to do a teardown on this drive. 8 platters, 15 or 16 heads. What I think went wrong in this drive is the head preamplifiers, which are mounted on the side of the head stack, because it will retry and retry and retry, and it will eventually get a successful read. But I know that the heads are damaged because I was playing around with this last night, and the cover, the top cover, has a screw that actually centers the entire head stack when it is unlocked and not in its parking position. Let me unlock it. But this entire head stack is supposed to be kept in place with a screw right here, and that would come down from the top cover and basically line this entire head stack up. And I was playing around with this last night, and I spun it up with the cover off, and as such this screw wasn't in here, and it made an awful noise, and it actually physically moved the drive a good quarter or a half inch. And I don't know if that was the magnets in the head stack becoming misaligned, or if that was an honest to goodness head crash. So now there are definitely some impurities on the platter here. You can, I don't know if you're able to tell, but there is a spot on the very edge of the platter right there. If it survives a rendering, compression, and encoding processes, where there is not a whole lot of magnetic material on the platters. Yeah, there's another spot right there. So this is probably one of those one-off dud drives. Then again, it could have been a sign of future things to come, because I did some looking around this morning, and these drives used to be manufactured by Imprimis Technologies, formerly I forget exactly what the former company name was, but I think it was Magnetic. Yeah, Magnetic Technologies Incorporated, I believe, is the former company name for Imprimis Technologies. And these drives were built for the Control Data Corporation, and at some point during a cost-cutting process, Control Data Corporation sold Imprimis Technologies to Seagate in 1989. And these drives used to be called the CDC WREN series, WREN. And Seagate's literature up until a certain point, I think about 1994 or so, 94 or 95, mentions that name. Now, the CDC-built drives have a secondary part number here, starting with 94, I believe, 94 or 91 down here beneath the Seagate model number. They have a secondary model number down here. It's 5 digits long, starts with 91 or 94. Those are the first 2 digits, and then after those 5 digits, it's followed by a dash, and then 2 or 3, and then 2 digits, sometimes 1 or 2 additional letters. So, and you can also tell if it's an Imprimis-built drive by the rubber sealant. Well, by the sealing methodology. You can see here, Seagate chose to use basically a rubber silicone paste that hardens up into well, once it cures, it becomes a gasket. Now, I'm actually taking this cover back off, and this gasket here is, this is what happened, this is what Seagate started using once they took over the manufacturing of these drives in late 1992, early 93. So once I back this spindle motor screw off, go ahead and take this screw off. And you can see that on this drive they used a silicone paste that was probably robotically applied that forms the gasket that seals, that hermetically seals the head disk assembly area from the rest of the outside world. But on the older Imprimis-built drives, built by Imprimis Technologies for the Control Data Corporation, they use a fixed rubber gasket. This is not a silicone sealant. This is probably a silicone rubber hybrid gasket that seals the drive. So, and the reason I'm pointing all this out is after I determined that this drive was totally dead last night, basically not usable, I went ahead and ordered another drive off eBay. So now that drive is definitely an older Imprimis-built drive because it's got the classic red gasket and it's got the extra CDC part number down there. Now again, CDC in this case is Control Data Corporation, not the Center for Disease Control. So, and that particular drive is a Seagate ST41200NV drive. Yes, NV as in Novell NetWare certified. So, I'm pretty confident that that drive will work. The seller said it does not power on, but these drives are finicky about that. If they are not set up exactly right, they will not power on, or they will behave really, really weirdly. So, That particular drive, it only had one jumper on it. I think it was an ID bit jumper, a SCSI ID jumper. It had the terminating resistors installed just behind the SCSI connector, but it did not have the termination jumper enabled. So someone was probably playing funny games with the SCSI setup, and that's why the drive will not power on, because it is not set up correctly. Because what I think is going on is when you first apply power to the drive, it releases, the first thing that happens is the firmware begins to boot up, and the a relay releases the brake on the spindle motor. The spindle motor has a brake, and when the drive loses power, initially that brake is not applied. But when the drive drops below a certain RPM, the last portion of the drive electronics shut down, and a brake is applied that brings the spindle motor to a very rapid halt. And that that is so that way system operators can either easily and quickly move a system or exchange the drive out without waiting 5 minutes for the drive to spin down without the brake. So, and anyways, power is applied, the brake is released, and then the drive firmware boots up. Once the drive firmware boots up, it performs a sanity check on the configuration as set by this setup block back here on the back of the drive. Now, this setup block configures the drive's options. I've got the I have the terminating resistors installed, and I have the drive set up for terminating power to be drawn off the 5-volt rail provided on the MOLEX connector. I also have the SCSI ID set to SCSI ID 1. And there was a jumper right around here, so yeah, the configuration on that drive was not correct. So that's probably why it didn't power up. So anyways, we'll probably do a teardown video on this drive at some point. I'm going to restore the original system configuration, grab disk images of these drives for backup purposes, and that will be the end of this video for now. We will regroup once I have gotten the ST41200N drive, and I have actually verified that it works and whatnot. So yeah, if that drive is also not in a good functional condition, that will be the end of this upgrade, because I'm not spending any more money on this. I spent $53 on this drive, and I spent $43 on its replacement. So anyways, this is TCG Productions. Peace out, guys. Peace out. See you in the next one.